Well, hello friends and neighbors. John, your whiskey neighbor here. Welcome to my kitchen table. Today I want to talk about a Canadian rye. This should be well known, but if it's new to you, certainly stick around. This is a bottle worth having a conversation about. This is Lot 40, 100% Rye Whiskey. As I said in the intro, I wanted to talk to you today about what I would say is a Canadian classic. Now, it's not a Canadian classic like Canadian Club, Crown Royal, Gibson, any of these, bottles that you probably can see anywhere in the entire world. But I would say, I've talked about Lot 40 before. I've shared how it's usually on my shelf. I've shared the cask strength, both the 12-year-old and the 11-year-old last couple of years. But I don't think I've actually reviewed just a straight up bottle of Lot 40. And if I have, it wasn't the green label, I think. Anyways, it's I think so defining of Canadian whiskey, and yet I think it's available in many international markets, which is tough for a lot of Canadian whiskeys, that I'm happy to talk about it again. So this, Lot 40 Rye. It is the green label. Now, a little bit of history. Lot 40 came out, I think, in 89, 90, somewhere around there, and it really didn't pick up. And so it went away. Now, I don't know how long they kept it on the shelf. I should have looked that up, but I think only a couple of years. And then they came back out with this in 2012. And that would have been a yellow label. And in 2012, it was a 90% unmalted, 10% malted rye. The whole thing is 100% rye. This is a true rye, not just a little bit of rye, not just 51%. It's all rye. And then I think they kept releasing that bottle, but just as the stock aged. So they came out 2012 with some malted rye in it, and they kept putting it out till, I don't know when they shifted, 2015-ish? And then they went to this green label. If you've got a green label bottle, that's what's on the shelf right now. This is 100% unmalted rye. So they use enzymes to open it up to get at to let the yeast get at the sugars. What else can I say? I like the bottle. This is the same glass bottle behind the copper label that they do on their cask strengths. It's 43%. And I know it's they use both a column still and a pot still. The column is the first part of the process, and then they use a pot to really make their selection. And I've heard Dr. Don Livermore on Whiskey Topic. Talk, really about that's a big part of the flavor that we're going to find in this 100% unmalted rye. However, 43% is good. It's a little bit more than 40. I would love for them to, I love their cask strength releases that come out annually for sure. But even this, I think it'd be awesome if they kicked this to 46 and was like unchill filtered, uncolored. Because at 43, and without saying it, I have a feeling that this is probably filtered and colored. We don't know the age on this. It's a NAS whiskey, at least as far as I've been able to read. I've always kind of read and felt like it's somewhere around that. I like to think it's a 5 or 6 year old whiskey, but rye does well young, so it could be our 4 or 5 year old, and I wouldn't complain. So pot still, column, 100% unmalted rye. It's Canadian, out of the Hiram Walker distillery. Let's see what I find in it. This is a big rye nose. By that is, it's juicy, it's flavorful, but it's spicy right away. On the nose, the spice isn't as peppery. It's just more like a cinnamon, lively. But actually, I find a candied note to it right away too, like a cinnamon apple caramel, not a caramel apple, like a hard candy red apple. Those with the sugar on them. Yeah, and a little bit of fruit in the nose too. That could be a nice red apple or no, maybe a little sweeter. So maybe a cherry. Oh, and there the cinnamon really comes in. Spice it starts to deepen a little bit, so it goes from that bright pepper, but not really, but cinnamon into a little deeper, so a little baking, maybe. Boy, what would that be? No, it's not quite a clove yet. No, but it stays sweet, spicy, a little bit of fruit. And it took a few noses, a few in there, out there, and now I can kind of get at a grassy note. Cut grass. I would say like a herbal note, but not overpowering. To me, what's up front is that candied fruit and spiced. Now my mouth has started watering a little bit. I'm going to taste it. Cheers. There's so much good flavor in here. This is a little youthful, so it bites a little bit, but then the bite that kind of comes almost like, oh, is that alcohol? Quickly develops in your mouth as a peppery, spicy bite, something you're looking for in your whiskey. All the fruits that I was kind of hinting at the nose come out. And today, I've got a little more cherry in the past, but today, this sip, to me, this is a little more red apple. It's a little juicier than the last time I had it. So kind of a juicier fruit. Definitely now a length in the spice. So peppery and lively, but what would be those baking spices that I'm trying to get at? Ginger, clove, a few of those things going on. Oak comes back at the early bit of the finish for sure. Wood notes start to build up. Better have another sip. Yeah, here I can really get at some wood quality. And that's actually unique, and it's on the bottle. So many Canadian whiskeys are aged just in ex-bourbon or in reused Canadian whiskey barrels, whereas this rye, this lot 40, is in, I thought it said it on it. Thought small batches using rye grain and, yeah, virgin oak. I was like, writing's getting a little small for my eyes, but I'm glad it was on there. I was going to tell you this anyways, and I'm glad I'm not going to be wrong, in that it's aged in virgin oak, and that's unique for a lot of Canadian whiskey. It's not common. That's obviously required of American bourbon. But in Canada, a lot of aging in different barrel types and reused barrels. And the virgin oak, to me, actually doesn't come back until I've had a few sips into it, or the early part of the finish. Now the nose, I can maybe even get a hint of char. But the palate is so tasty. This is a little grassy, a little herbally, and peppery. So if you're coming new to rye, I think you'll appreciate the volume of flavor, but it might put you off. Even the middle part of the finish, I would say, is a little bit tannic. It's drying, which is nice, or at least I like finishes that are kind of drying because I think it sets you up for the next sip. But there, you might, if you don't like rye, if you don't like rye, I can't recommend this. This to me is rye. When I'm tasting other ryes, Lot 40 is one of the ryes in my mind, one that I've had enough of that I'm like, okay, do I taste even a little bit of dill? Do I have that herbal note? What's the peppery? What's the spice like? But what I like about this is I find it nicely expression or balanced from an interesting fruity nose, candied, into a peppery, lively, juicy, fruity palate, to a finish that does bring in the wood, and yeah, there is a green grass cut herbal note that kind of cuts through it all. I like that. That's the one thing that I think might say, hey, I like rye, or it's not my favorite part of rye, if that makes sense. So, you know, if I were to give a star rating on straight up green level lot 40, actually probably as I've been tasting whiskeys for the channel over the last, I gotta find the date, it's just coming on almost 2 years. I've actually grown in my appreciation of lot 40 rye. I always liked it, but I thought of it more as a mixing because it's got a lot of backbone, right? So it's very good in cocktails. It really does bring the spice and the candy fruit. Like it's got, you know, but over the years, this sits on the shelf in Canada, you know, between that $32 and $36 range, kind of in there. And I can't think of a better whiskey, if you like that spicy nature of rye, than this bottle. So, there's always dimensions to improve, so it sits at 4 stars. But when I think of the value and the drinkability, like it almost goes up to 4.5, which is crazy for a $30 bottle. But it just is so much flavor. There's some tannic edges, there's some of that herbal notes, sometimes can be overwhelming. And it is still a hair young, and sometimes it coats, but I'd like, you know, if it was just a little more. Anyways, I'm waffling. But between 4 and 4.5 stars, very comfortably. Now I'd like to compare it to the only other rye I have around. I got a couple of unopened bottles, but I'm trying to put a few bottles to rest. So this is Baby Saz, or Sazerac. It's a straight rye out of the US, 45%. Also would have been aged in New Oak, and probably similar age, I imagine. I don't know the mash bill in this. It's not 100% rye. To be a straight rye, it just has to be more than 51%. This is a much sweeter nose. This is like a sweetness, like now caramel, more than that candy sweetness like this one has. Like also a cinnamon note to it. Now I'm curious. So a little bit lighter nose than the lot 40, a little bit more cinnamon, a little bit more caramel. Yeah, less fruit, absolutely. Let's give it a taste. That particular sip, again, mirrored the nose pretty quick. But to me, actually had a little more wood in it. And almost a little more wood, a little more charred wood, a little more backbone there, which was interesting. I should be clearing my palate with water or something else. So this obviously isn't a professional comparison. Okay, so I like both, actually. And Saz is one of my favorite ryes. But in this comparison, the volume of flavors does stand out, and the depth of flavors in the lot 40. To me, you know, more than just cinnamon. When you get into the palate, you've got a lot of that, you know, ginger and clove and other stuff. Also, the grass herbal note, which I think some people could be put off by, but is definitely stronger in here. The longer finish brings the wood out here, but I will say even in the palate, I was getting a little more wood in the Saz, which is interesting. I don't recall saying that before. So I think you can tell my personal preference, but I actually like both of these. If this was a 4 star, then this is a 4.5. That's my comparison for sure. Guys, thanks for joining with me. It's it's actually kind of raining and snarly outside, so I didn't mind sitting at the kitchen table and sharing a little bit about this rye experience. Look, if you like rye and you haven't had lot 40, I really can't recommend it high enough. Like I really really would say put it into your rotation, make a note to yourself, buy a bottle of Lot 40. I really think you'll thank me for it. If you don't like rye at all, you really may not like this though. It does have, right from that peppery and that grassy note is very present in this, but it's still juicy and flavorful. I've qualified enough. You guys go out and have a good evening.